Father Rolheiser, good evening.
I'm happy to be here.
This has been such a joy to be with you on retreat in your neck of the woods here in San Antonio. Thank you for your time. You know, they say never meet your heroes. So I keep bracing for you to say or do something to devastate my soul. But so far, so good.
Hopefully, it won't be in the next hour.
Hopefully, at least wait until tomorrow
Okay.
after we're done here, right? But no, it has been such a joy. I experience you exactly as I would imagine after so many years of reading your work. And I'm so grateful for your life and for your writing, which has played such a key role in my own life and so many others. So thank you. It's really a joy to have a conversation with you tonight.
Thank you. Thanks. That's quite a compliment.
Let's just start off. Let's go for the jugular. Let's just start off at the deep end of the pool. You are a 3-time cancer survivor. You're in your 70s. You've been a priest for over 50 years. Am I
50
right?
exactly.
50 exactly.
Yeah.
Half a century of spiritual leadership. Well done. I imagine you live with a heightened sense, or maybe a reality-based sense, of your mortality in ways that somebody at my stage of life in a healthy body for the most part, I likely live with some neurosis of like imagining that I'm immortal and life's just going to go on and on and on. What has been forced through your diagnosis, and what has living with that uncertainty, what has that done to heighten your faith, or has it? What effect has that had on your spiritual journey?
Double. One of them is the faith is one thing. I'll talk about that second. It heightens your being alive.
Mm.
Let me just give you a little history. I was diagnosed with colon cancer 2011, which is 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And initially they said, we've caught it early, not a problem. You're going to need surgery, but you're going to have to do, 4 months of chemo. I said, but then no problem. And then, I started doing the chemo and I was checking days, day 1, day 2. I got 100 days, I'm out of this. And about halfway through, I realized this is silly. I'm putting my life in brackets. And I stopped doing that. I thought, no, you don't stop living. I have to, live fully and not see this in faith and so on. And that was a good moment for me, But then you know what happens when you get healthy again? Within 6 months, forgot about it.
It
I
just
was
goes back to normal
yeah.
life. Yeah.
And then in 2014, it came back, but then it was serious. My doctor told me, my oncologist, he said, I'll just be blunt with you. You probably have 30 months left to live. Well, that was a jolt.
Mm.
And he said, we'll do chemo again. It probably won't work. He said, so basically prepare yourself. And I came back and this was a jolt, but then I wrote a creed for myself. It's kind of like, if I'm going to die, I want to make every day special. You know how you get up. I do this now in the morning. I never used to say, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. I have a healthy day. I'm breathing. I'm doing stuff. And, it made me appreciate my work more. It made me appreciate life more, my friendships, everything more. So that, a heightened sense of your mortality, it just heightens everything.
Yeah.
And then they put me on this drug, and it actually worked for another 7 years.
Wow.
And then they said, well, now it's over. You do chemo, you're probably live another year or two. And then I heard about this operation in MD Anderson, and I went down there. This guy said, no, we'll take this out. And we're thinking 5, 8 years or something, Um, but I'm in that phase now, but I've never forgot from 2014 to now, this creed is kind of, every day special. Every day is special. To me, when I say this prayer, today is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. I live that every day.
Mm.
I eat my morning breakfast. Say, thank you, Jesus. I'm alive, and not only alive, I'm healthy.
Yes.
And just you realize that walking, that doing work, everything, it's a privilege. It's a gift from God.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. It's faith in that sense, not so much faith that it scared me. I'm going to die and facing God, and not so much that. It was more. And for me, I don't know how it is for you, but fear of dying is not so much fear of facing God. It's that you don't want to let go of this life. I mean,
Yeah.
humanly, it's just, we don't want to let go of this life. I mean, we know we have to do it eventually, but not yet.
Yeah.
As Augustine used to say, yes, but not yet. Okay.
It does make me think of Saint Benedict's, command and the rule to keep your death before your eyes daily.
Yeah.
And I know there's an interpretation of that that's like an obsession with masochism, but I've never read it that way. I've read it like embrace the fleeting gift of
No,
life.
in one of my writings recently, I quoted this, but Flannery O'Connor, in one of her books, she has this guy, there's an escaped killer. And anyway, he kidnaps this woman. And because she's afraid, and this woman is not a very nice woman. She's really gracious and nice and everything, but they eventually kills her. But then he says, she'd have been a good person if there'd been somebody to kill her there every minute of her life. But
Meaning if she'd lived under the threat of death, she would have been a good person.
Yeah, and, that's kind of crass, but there's something to that.
Yes.
So
the positive effect of an awareness.
So
of your
with me, it's never been so much fear. You die, and I really believe that our death, we're going to meet our Maker in a warm, wonderful embrace that'll probably be the best experience of love we've ever had, So it's not that, but it's, who wants to say goodbye to the planet? Who wants to say goodbye to health?
Yes.
Who wants to say goodbye to all your work and everything you're doing, and family and friends?
I hope and pray that you live for many more years. I want to have more conversations like this. But as someone who is nearing the transition to the next stage in your spiritual journey, for whom that I imagine that must, it is on your horizon. What would you say to those kind of back in those who are 24 or 31 or 19, who are closer to the beginning of a long life of discipleship to Jesus? Do you have any man, there are 2 or 3 things that I just wish everyone early on in the journey would just, if you could get this young, if you could get this early, it would help you to navigate the spiritual journey?
Yeah, I want to say a couple of things. And one of them comes from Jesus.
Always a good place to start.
It's interesting. Sometimes we forget how scandalous Jesus was.
Yeah.
In his capacity to enjoy life. We know that Jesus could shock people, but give up your life, take up your cross. But there's very powerful passage where Jesus scandalized his contemporaries by his capacity just to enjoy life. The woman at his feet with the perfume, but also the drinking of wine. But remember, they say, how come your disciples don't fast? And Jesus said, why should they fast? The bridegroom is still with them. Now that has a double meaning. The bridegroom's him. But also in the New Testament, the bridegroom is a season of your life.
Mm.
See, when you're young and you're healthy, don't second guess that. And, the example I use with that is, I'm sure you've had that experience where you visit somebody in the hospital who's really ill, or they may be dying, and you walk away and you feel guilty because you're not dying. Jesus would say, don't feel guilty at all. You'll soon enough be walking away from your bed. He said someday
time will come.
The bridegroom will take and would have lots of time to fast. He's not just talking about he's leaving. He said, no, the season of health and life. So enjoy your life, not in the hedonistic, Epicurean wine women song, but precisely, you're young, enjoy your work, enjoy your life, and so on.
Mm.
Second one, I got that from an old man. We had a priest in my community who aged as wonderfully I've ever seen a man age, and he died at age 100. But I'm not sure this guy ever got angry in his life. He just had this generous spirit and so on, and loving. And somebody, I think it was his 90th birthday, and one of our young guys Leo said, what's the secret? He said, I want to age like you. I said, what's the secret? He said, start now. He said, start now. He says, you don't put off, the things you need to do in terms of opening your life, being gracious, giving up grudges. It's not something you postpone to, after 50 and after 60 and after 70. He said, start now.
Yeah.
He said, if you nurse angers, you nurse grudges and so on, he said, it's only going to get worse. You're going to age into that. And so Jesus wants us to thrive. We weren't put on this life as a test. Can you measure up? Can you be faithful? I mean, that's there as a bottom line.
Yes.
But Jesus wants you to thrive. Jesus wants you as a parent, you have kids, you want your kids to thrive. You didn't have kids to give them a test that they be
Mm-hmm.
loyal to Jesus, you know. You want them to thrive. And part of that is Jesus seemed to have no problem enjoying life,
Mm.
you know. And the irony is paradoxically that also empowered him to give it up.
Yes.
I think sometimes it's double when we somehow don't give ourselves permission to enter life, and then we also struggle to give it away. That's a paradox.
Mm.
That see, and what Jesus gives us, he gives us sacred permission to enter into your life, you know, to enjoy the fact, like right now, you're young, you're in ministry, you're doing important stuff. Enjoy those years.
I love that you think I'm young.
Okay.
I take it.
Okay. And you know, but then to look at see at that age, I don't tell 20-year-olds, you know, one day you're going to die.
Yes.
Start waking up. No. I would tell them more like start building. So when you're 30 and 40 and 50, you know, look at your angers, look at things that you need to look at, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Do your grieving and for what's wrong with, you know, from your, if you have a dysfunctional background
Yes.
or whatever. So,
And you know what you are calling on people to do, whatever you want to call that. Some people call that going on the inner journey,
yeah,
where you start to attend to your wounds and your family of origin and your interiority and um, all of that. I'm shocked at how few people are up for that inner journey, at least in our culture. You know, there's that saying I keep thinking of right now: no one matures without aging, but many people age without maturing.
yeah,
And it does feel like a lot of people in Western culture mature to this kind of basic life architecture level, but then they kind of just plateau and they live kind of, I don't know, just a more generic materialism driven, career driven, pleasure driven, whatever kind of family driven, whatever kind of life, and never really go on the inner journey and begin to prepare to die, begin to, you know, open their heart, as you're saying. Why? I think I've read you say before that we live in a first half of life culture. There's almost like there's this, you know, cabal, almost like this vast conspiracy
yeah.
against interior depth and against really spirituality, against the life of the soul, against the journey of spiritual formation. Why do you think that is? Is there something in the culture? Is it a deeper human resistance? Why are so many people resistant to ever going on this inner journey?
Well, I'll start with a quote, which you gave partially, that um, the man who directed my thesis in Belgium was a Dutch theologian, older man, and he said, right now, he said, Western culture constitutes a virtual conspiracy against interiority.
Hmm.
You know, and what he meant by that is not that, you know, there's people conspiring. It's just that's our culture.
And he said this many years before the
Yeah,
iPhone
yeah.
and Wi-Fi and social media.
But I'll begin to answer with a story. Some years ago, I was listening to an interview on the radio, on NPR radio, with a journalist and his wife. Okay, and they had just come back from 11 years of living in Paris, and they were journalists and artists. And while they were there, their son was born, was now 9. So when they lived in Paris, they were artists, so they didn't have a television set. They were completely out of the loop of Western, you know, pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
So when they moved back, their son didn't know who Taylor Swift was and who, you know, all this stuff. Okay. So now they moved back to the United States. He's 9 years old. And so they said, the interviewer said, your son, he said, has he held out against pop culture? I said, for about a week. But then he said this, he says, nobody holds out against it. He says, popular culture right now, which is spreading around the world, he said, it's the most powerful narcotic that's ever been perpetrated on this planet, for good and for bad. A lot of
Mm.
it. But he said, it's just so powerful. And like Western culture or pop culture right now, it's a virtual narcotic. And it's really hard for people not just to be swallowed up by it. And then normally what it takes is something has to crack.
Yeah.
Remember a line from Leonard Cohen everybody quotes now? There's a crack in everything. That's where the
Mm-hmm.
light
That's where
gets
the light
in.
gets in.
So, you know, it takes a breakdown. It takes a breakdown in health, a relationship thing, something where, because otherwise swim along in the culture, and there isn't any place for interiority.
Mm.
And the second thing, back to Jesus. Jesus said the rich struggle to enter the kingdom. Now,
Yeah.
he wasn't just talking about money,
Yes.
you know.
No, the
See,
kingdom of God is within you. I've thought about
you know,
that many times.
see, but why did the rich struggle? And see, for Jesus, the opposite of rich, poor, but the opposite of rich. Notice he idealized children. He said, the rich struggle in the kingdom, children going easily. Why? Now, he wasn't. I think we tend to idolize the innocence of a child.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't
Yeah.
what he was idealizing the dependence of a child.
Mm.
See, children have no illusion of self-sufficiency. If mom and dad don't get up, they don't eat. If it's not given to, they don't have it. But see, when we're healthy, when we're young, when we're in affluent culture, we have the illusion of self-sufficiency. It's mine. I earned it. I can do it, and so on. That's an illusion. And so our culture, its individuality, its strength. That's why this changes when their health goes, when something
Yes.
else happens, and so on. See, then you're no longer rich. You just realize I can't do this for myself. I'm not self-sufficient.
Yeah.
It's interesting, medieval philosophers, theologians. How they define God philosophically? They said God is self-sufficient being. That sounds abstract. That's actually a good definition. See, God doesn't need anything other than God. But everything and everybody else is not self-sufficient.
Mm.
We're not self-sufficient,
Yeah.
except we feel self-sufficient.
But it's an illusion.
Yeah. Children don't. Little kids, they know I don't provide. Mom and dad don't feed me. I don't get fed.
Mm.
See, and he said, they go to heaven easily. But see, so the combination of affluence, by affluence, I don't just mean money, but just,
Yeah.
we're young, we're healthy, we don't feel vulnerable. A couple of generations ago, people still felt vulnerable. There weren't vaccinations, you could get sick and die,
People
and so
died a
on.
lot more often, a lot
People died in
younger.
childbirth, and so on. Said today, the average age 100 years ago was 49.
Yes.
Today, you're only warming up for life.
Life expectancy was 49 100 years ago in
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, so that there was and there was just a lot more dependence on community
Mhm.
and so on. See, and where this also comes out is the individuality where we don't think we need community anymore.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard this line many times. I'm spiritual, but not religious.
Mm-hmm.
It means that I can do Jesus, I can do God, I can't do community, or I will do community on my own.
Yeah. Through my lens of.
Yeah, or when I need it.
Mm-hmm.
Reginald Bibby, who's a sociologist of religion up in Canada, the Baptist, and kind of our major sociologist of religion. But he has some interesting lines. He says, notice he says, people are treating their churches the same way they're treating their families, which means they don't want you to disappear. They want you around when they need you.
Mm-hmm.
He also says, people haven't left their churches, they just aren't going. The same as they haven't left their families. They just aren't going home a lot.
Wow.
See, and so it's a problem of culture, of individuality. And my fear is it's getting worse, not better.
Mm-hmm.
But then also just the power of pop culture is just so powerful. Who are the stars from everything from the pop industry to sports heroes to Hollywood to just corporate world to Facebook and so on. It's a world apart.
Yeah.
And, just a symbol of lack of interiority. All of us, we're sitting with something in our hand at all times, that's not going to spawn interiority.
No, it can just keep you. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard it said many times that people go on the inner journey for one of two reasons, desire or pain.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's pain.
Yeah.
But, you're calling pop culture I think you called it a cultural narcotic. And narcotics dull pain, unless if the pain is really, really, really bad. And I just wonder if that cultural narcotic is so powerful. It doesn't keep everybody. At some point, the pain comes through and people receive an invitation.
Yeah. Sooner or later, it's going to break through. Daniel
But you
Berrigan,
can delay it longer than ever before.
Daniel Berrigan was a hero of mine. But Daniel Berrigan says, he said, culture is so powerful. And he said, the one thing that could protect you is prayer. See, prayer links you to something beyond your culture.
Mm.
You're linked to something beyond. Except the trouble is, most people don't have a strong enough prayer life.
Mm.
So his other thing was, if you can't do it, he said, connect to the poor, connect to people who aren't into culture. So, for instance, he would always serve at a hospice for dying cancer patients.
Mm-hmm.
He said, when you're watching people die every day, he said, kind of gives you perspective on the culture.
Yes.
And he was honest enough to say, like, my prayer life isn't strong enough. I can't draw this. He said, if you don't do it, the culture is, you're going to drown. He said, the culture will drown you. So he said, either do it through prayer
Prayer
or
or serving the poor,
or serving the poor.
because they both ground you in reality
Yeah.
in a culture that's constantly in
And it's
denial.
interesting, the poor for Jesus include little kids.
Mm.
So, for instance, a
Mhm.
father of a young family, that grounds you
Yeah.
or helps ground you.
Yes. One of the things I love about your work, I experience your writing and teaching as a kind of spiritual cartography. Like, this is my perception. It seems like you have gone far down the inner journey, the spiritual journey, whatever you want to call it. And you're an academic, so you have access to, the best Christian teachers for thousands of years. You've just spent decades of life, reading and thinking and studying and teaching. But, there's a lot of your own life experience, personal experience, and priestly experience with other people. And I feel like you've kind of gone ahead on the spiritual journey and done some map making along the way and left behind, not a path to follow per se, but some landmarks to look for, some warnings along the way, some invitations along the way. And I'd love to suss that out a little bit with you. So you are in the process of writing a trilogy that you started how many years ago was The Holy Longing?
1999.
1999. And third one should come out in a year or two,
Yeah.
right? So, gosh, quarter of a century, you've
Yeah.
been writing this 3-book trilogy on the 3 stages of discipleship, The Holy Longing, and followed by your book, Sacred Fire. I read The Holy Longing many years ago when I was in my 20s, beautiful. But then somehow I came to Sacred Fire, which is all about discipleship in the long middle years of your life. You would say, I think, kind of mid-20s to 70s or so.
Yeah.
And it has become almost like my playbook for discipleship for the long middle years that I'm living through right now. And you have put language to things that I was feeling, but I just were incoherent, as you would say, which were not clear in my mind. So I'd love to suss that out a little bit. You have broken down the spiritual journey into 3 stages. First off, tell us, why is it helpful to think about following Jesus over a lifetime through this concept of stages? And secondly, describe your 3 stages that you kind of, how you frame it.
The first thing, why, how that works with Jesus. And that is, as I often say in talks, like Jesus didn't break down teaching this is for young people, for middle-aged people, for older people, it's for kids. Jesus just taught.
Yes.
And all his teachings, whether it's his parables or whether it's a Sermon on the Mount, they're just for everybody.
Yes.
Okay.
All people for all time.
But now the difference is you hear that at different stages of your life. So imagine you're 10 years old, you hear the Sermon on the Mount. You're 20 years old, you hear the Sermon on the Mount. You're 45 years old and have young kids and you hear the Sermon on the Mount. You're 65 years old looking at retirement, you hear the Sermon on the Mount. Means different things. See, it's the same teaching,
but
same
you hear
teaching.
it a different way.
See, and so so today we're and I drew this from basically from a classical mystic whom you're very familiar with, John of the Cross.
Yes.
So John of the Cross would say there are 3 stages of transformation in your life, and he uses mystical terminology, your journey through the dark night of the senses, your proficiency, which is kind of a flat word, okay, and then, the dark night of the spirit. But basically, I'd also studied anthropology. To me, this made perfect sense between the spiritual life and human life, that basically you can put another wording to them. There's 3 great stages. One of is to struggle to get your life together.
Stage 1, the struggle to get your life
from the day
together.
you're born till you sometime in your 20s. Today, sometimes it's in the 30s before
Yes.
people, before you land in a career, a marriage, and so on. See, and then you have these middle years, which can be 50 years.
Yep.
Um,
Stage
and,
2, which you
and
call.
generative discipleship,
Mhm.
and that's the struggle to give your life away.
So
See,
stage 1, struggle to get your life together. Stage 2, struggle to give your life
away.
away.
But then we all have to exit the planet. And how we exit is going to be very important. And
Yes.
so then there's a struggle how to give your death away,
Mm.
how to live your last years so that, as I always said, that your last greatest gift to your family is a gift of peace and not a gift of some kind of conflict or whatever. That when
Mhm.
you leave the planet, it's clean. It's
Mm.
a, it's a clean exit. And you leave behind um, a warmth, a cleanliness, um, a peace, a peace.
Mm.
Okay.
Wow.
And and that traces out. This isn't abstract. So if you take the first
Yeah,
stage,
so let's go through each one. Struggle to get your life together.
okay,
Struggle to give your
okay,
life away. Struggle to give your death away. Take us
let's take
through the first one. You're saying that 0 to
zero
mid
to
20s or
no,
whatever.
okay, 0 to mid 20s with a major thing in between. So, like for you're born. Usually, you're born in a hospital. You're taken home, and unless there's some trauma in your family, those first 10 to 12 to 13 years are usually pretty peaceful.
Yeah.
You know, you're learning languages and you're going to school and you,
Psychologists call it pre-neuroticism, right?
yeah,
You're
yeah,
not neurotic yet.
yeah,
You might be deeply wounded, but you're kind of just
yeah,
going through
and
life.
also you still enjoy your parents, and that's when you have
Yes.
family vacations and you go to
Yes.
Disneyland with and you enjoy Christmas and so on. And then there's a disruption, and disruption is puberty.
Oh,
Uh,
as a parent of 3 teenagers, 2 of which are 14, I'm
yeah,
well reminded now of
see, they
puberty.
literally become a different person,
Yeah.
and um, and that can happen in the space of one summer. And
Mhm.
as I always say, and I say in the book, that puberty is designed by God, designed by nature to be a little violent, because it rockets you to a certain stage of your life.
Mm.
See, so now it to put it the way anthropologists put it, it drives you out of the house.
Mhm.
You still live at home for a while, but you're on your cell phone. And you want to be with your friends. You don't want to be with your parents, and
Yeah,
so
you wanna
on.
go out on a
Yeah,
Friday night,
yeah, yeah.
you want independence,
You don't want your
freedom.
parents to pick you up at school. You don't even want to be
Mhm.
seen with your parents, and so on.
Mhm.
Um, See, and as I said, those are dangerous years. But see, then your first real struggle for individuation, the real
Mm.
struggle begins not so much at birth, but at that puberty.
Who am I?
Who am I? How am I going to turn out? Who's going to love me? What am I going to do with my life? What do I mean? And so on. And then see, puberty also, it's biologically, emotionally, psychologically. Um, there's no other way of saying you heat up.
Yes.
You heat up physically,
You're
sexually,
charged with these
biologically,
new
and
energies.
all these energies and so on. And oftentimes you're given an adult body
Mhm.
without an adult mind.
Mhm.
And that can be a dangerous combination, you know. Um, a 14-year-old child, really, in an adult body,
Yes.
and with raging hormones and so on. See, but that drives you out. And so for the next 10, today it might take 20 years, you know, you're looking to find your way back home again.
Mm.
You're looking to find somebody to marry, you're looking to find a career, to land somewhere, to find
Place
something
to
meaningful.
live, an
m-
identity to live
Yeah, yeah,
in,
meaningful,
community to belong to.
meaningful for your life and so on.
So you're leaving home to find home.
Yeah. And then normally it happens.
Mhm.
Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you have people in their 40s and 50s, they're still trying to find who am I and what do I mean and what's my career going to be. But most people, you land. Um, it can be dangerous. A lot of people don't make it through those years.
Yes.
Drugs, sex, alcohol, gangs.
Yeah,
Uh,
you described it today. I would love to hear you talk about that as an attempt how, traditional cultures have already always had an initiation moment
yeah,
for boys to become men in particular and girls to become women. But in the absence of that in modern Western culture and really disappearing around the world, people attempt to self
yeah,
initiate, which is often quite dangerous.
yeah. Because we're not helping them.
Yeah.
See, in fact, one of the most important things I think we do in church society is to try to develop some initiation rites.
Hmm.
You know, um, I'm not sure in your church you have a sacrament called confirmation. We have we have baptism, and then we have a
Hmm.
second. but confirmation, seminary prof used to say, it's a beautiful sacrament looking for a theology. But, like, could we have some type of
Yes.
adult initiation that would be church oriented, like really a sacrament that you give at age 18 or
Yes.
whatever. But we don't. And see, unless as a parent you do it on your own, it's not going to be done. And then also, even if you do it on your own, you're launching your boys out there into a world where the other boys aren't initiated.
Yeah.
Well,
that's exactly what I've had to do, and you're right.
And so it helps, but they're moving in a world
against the flow of culture.
Against the flow of culture,
Yeah.
and so on. But during those years, I always point out, and in the Holy Long, I do a long section that's just, and also in Sacred Fire, the energies they have to deal with.
Yes.
So that, first of all, their sexuality is really strong. And it's not mature. The problem in our culture is you might reach puberty at 14 and you get married at 34. These 20 years of raging hormones.
And that's a new problem in the history of the world for the general population, right?
People used to get married at 14, 15, 18, so on. And see, then also today we have a culture that plays in. So, and university campuses are notorious, but it's not just university campuses, the kind of pickup culture, and sex.
Low view of sexuality.
Yeah.
It's no longer holy. It's no longer.
And it's interesting, I was reading Bibby's book, and he was saying that study millennials. And he said, there's good news and bad news. He said, the good news is most millennial kids, they eventually want a monogamous marriage. Bad news is they want to go through 15 years of sexual promiscuity. And the idea is, then I'll pull it together when I meet the right person.
Yeah, gosh, that is not how the
hardly the
formation
right
of the soul works.
That's not the best preparation for marriage. Just saying, I got 15 years of sexual license, then I'll sacralize my sex and take it home. And, good luck with that. So that's the problem. But the other thing is, during those years, there's just this powerful energy inside of kids, and that energy is actually beautiful. There's something about, kids.
I need to hear this. I'm thinking about my 17-year-old right now, who just always wants loud music on and always wants to do something and have people over.
And it's cheerleading.
Can't sit still.
But they're laughing a lot, and it's upbeat and so on. And there's something good about that. Like Freud looked at that, and Freud said, until you get 35 and some of that dies, you're pre-neurotic. And it covers your wounds. Kids can get along of different political parties and so on. After 35, who did you vote for? I'll never talk to you again. So, and
you're saying that energy carries you through some of the woundedness that you don't even realize you have yet until you get a bit older. The energy just carries you out into the world to leave home to find a home.
And your energy at that age still, and your dreams and so on, they overpower your wounds. I mean, and then get into your 30s and 40s, the wounds slowly overpower the energy. I always tell people, when you reach age 40, you realize your mother did love your sister better than you. Before that, it didn't bother you, and now it bothers you a great deal.
Yes.
And you feel your wounds and so on.
Yes, just how deeply you've been wounded.
See, and then that becomes a second dangerous time. That's when a lot of midlife crises and stuff and angers begin to seep into your life.
Resentment, yeah. You've said before that in the first half of life, we struggle with lust, but in the second half, we struggle with anger.
Yeah.
And I take my interpretation of that is the primary struggle for most young people is, what do I do with these energies, sexual or otherwise, that just want to draw energies for career, for upward mobility, for success, for whatever. They just want to drive. How do I channel?
Party on a Friday night. Just
how do I channel all of this pent up energy? But then there's a shift where the struggle is, how do I forgive? What's your paradigm? You have a 4-part paradigm: forgiving others for hurting you, forgiving yourself for your own mistakes and your own failures, forgiving life for being unfair, and what's your 4th one? Forgiving God for not rescuing you. Describe what you mean by that.
I actually got that from Andrew Greeley, who had written a critique on, there was a very famous book in the late 1990s by Frankie McCourt called Angela's Ashes, which was a brilliant book, an autobiography of this Irish guy, grown up in New York, went to Ireland, but his dad was an alcoholic and destroyed the family. His mother couldn't protect him and so on. But anyway, he had this hard life. But then he became this famous writer, and he made millions of dollars and so on, but also became an alcoholic who destroyed a couple of marriages.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he does a lot of whining in the book, even though the book is very brilliant. So Andrew Greeley, another third-generation Irishman, wrote a review on that. And Andrew, I knew Andrew. Andrew was a sharp man with a great sense of wit and humor. And he said, Frank, he said, let me tell you something. He said, you're whining about being Irish, poor, and Catholic. He said, the only three things that make you interesting, you know. But he said, I'm going to give you some advice. He said, one Irishman to the next before he died, said, forgive your father for being an alcoholic. Forgive your mother that she couldn't protect you. Forgive Ireland because it was poor when you lived there. Then forgive yourself for becoming an alcoholic and ruining two marriages. And then forgive God because life isn't fair. He said, so you don't want to die an angry, bitter person. He said, that's the only moral imperative there is. It's quite a line. He said, you don't want
That's
to die.
the only moral imperative that
You don't want to die an angry, bitter person. You're familiar, I'm sure, with the book called The Shack.
Mm-hmm.
William Young. And, you know, he got in trouble with some churches for that because
Oh, yeah.
his thesis in the
He
book
was based in the Portland area, I remember. Yeah.
his
hearing it all.
thesis is basically forgiveness trumps everything as a Christian.
Yeah.
You know, and
you see the load that Jesus puts onto it with if you do not forgive, neither will you be forgiven. I mean, that's like one of the most emphatic teachings of Jesus in all of the Gospels.
And why? Why won't you be forgiven?
You
know,
tell me, Ronald Rolheiser.
Well, because it's not on God's part. This is the problem. You know, if I go to heaven and somebody's there whom I can't stand, we'd need separate tables. You know, then heaven
there
would
are no separate tables at the marriage supper of the Lamb, right?
John Shea was this wonderful religious poet from Chicago. John Shea says, the heavenly table, the banquet table, is open to everyone who's willing to sit down with everyone.
Wow.
See, so if I'm not willing to sit down with everybody, it's not God who's excluding me. It's kind of like, I don't want to be at a table if Jack's there.
Yeah.
Well, then we're back on earth.
Yeah.
You know, we won't be forgiven because God can't forgive it. Not that, just basically, we can't have people.
There's that radical individualism again that just, we just can't imagine. This is a communal experience of salvation.
Everybody in heaven angry at each other. You know, we got earth. You know.
Okay, so now we're getting into stage 2.
Okay.
So stage 1, struggle to get your life together. Like, how do I leave home? What am I going to do with my life? Am I going to marry or not? If so, who? What's my identity? What's my community? Where do I belong? What's my place in the world? What's my Enneagram number? All of that stuff. That's phase 1. And then there's some kind of a transition into phase 2, the struggle to give your life away. Describe that stage for us.
Okay. Well, first of all, that can happen quickly or it can happen gradually. And usually we don't even know when it happens. You know, one day you realize you've landed. You know, I look at all the people who came to this seminar. Everyone came from a home. Everybody came from a house, from a career, and so on.
Yes.
You know, they've obviously found their way home again. Yes. You know, but sometimes you've got to be in before to realize, you know, I'm no longer a young person searching, who am I? I'm a married man with kids, and I have these responsibilities and so on. See, then it shifts. It's no longer, who am I? What do I mean? Who will marry me? And now it's, how do I do this? You know,
I'm tired.
You know, and it's how do I serve the world? So it's a good expression. Simply, you have to do the next 50 years. You're trying to give your life away.
And it's a long run of time.
It's a long run. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes. God willing,
No, which is also very important spiritually. You know, spiritually, see the difference between a marathon and a sprint. It's one thing to sustain a prayer life for 2 years. Another thing to sustain it for 60 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to go through some seasons and so on. You can, or like fervor. If we identify our religiosity just with fervor is beautiful. It's a gift from
like
God.
An emotional passion. If you're yeah.
But you can't, it doesn't sustain.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
You know, the same as, you know, a couple, they marry and they go on a honeymoon. It's wonderful. But you eventually come home from a honeymoon,
Yeah.
not a marriage, and it's the same with our prayer life and God. But see, so the next 40, 50, or whatever years of your life, and actually those years are usually pretty clear to us in terms of what we should be doing.
Hmm.
You're a parent and you have a job and everything else, a vocation. You don't get up in the morning and say, I wonder what I mean. I wonder what I should be doing. You,
I have to get the kids to school,
you're
and we got to
looking
make
at the
lunch, and we got
checklist and,
to pay the mortgage. Yeah.
how am I going to get through this day, Um, see, and that can be for years,
Hmm.
that, like I wrote this book, Domestic Monastery. It's like, the
Every
monastery,
young
it's,
parent on the planet should read that book, and it takes about 25
yeah,
minutes to read it, which is
in,
perfect.
in terms of like the monastic bell controls, except the monastic bell becomes your kids, your job, your mortgage, and so on. And it basically dictates your life to you,
Yeah.
uh, Benedict, who wrote the rules for Western monasticism, he had this famous line. He says, a monk's life is regulated by the bell. And he has a famous line. He says, when the bell rings, no matter what you're doing, you drop it, you go to the next exercise. And he has
Yes.
this famous thing, says, if you're writing a letter, you need to cross the T, you put the pen down.
Yes.
He said, you go to the next exercise.
And then you come to prayer. The bell
Yeah.
rings, the monks all
And-
come
and he
together
said,
for prayer.
You go there, he said, not because you want to, because it's time. And he
Yeah.
said, time isn't your time, it's God's time.
And part of that, right, is weaning people off of narcissism.
Yeah.
Your
yeah.
life is not your own.
Yeah.
Your life belongs to God. It belongs to this community.
See,
so
so
put the pen down and go to prayer.
So you basically, as a parent, you're a monk,
Yeah.
and
You're saying that children can function for you as a beleaguered young mom or dad,
right.
the same way as a monastic bell for
Yeah,
a full-time monk
Yeah.
in a Benedictine abbey. Like,
And even when
they
the
wake
kid,
up from the nap crying, that's your monastic
Yeah.
bell. You put your
also
letter down.
when they're babies, you get up in the middle of the night and you do vigils.
Yeah, it's just like
monks
you're,
get up
you're like
in the
those
night.
crazy monks that pray in 2 in the morning,
Yeah, yeah.
also known as all young parents.
Yeah, they'll know what.
Yes.
It's interesting. James Hillman, who died, he was this wonderful philosopher. He was an agnostic, but interestingly and ironic, he probably did some of the deepest writing on soul that's been written.
Hmm.
But he also said, when you're a young person, it comes back again when you're older. He said, aging turns you all into monks, except instead of getting up to feed a baby, you have to get up at night to go to the bathroom. He said, you still have to do vigils.
Mhm.
And
Wow. So what are some of the struggles that you face? Many people listening will be in that, the long, let's just say between 20s
Yeah.
and 70s. That's most people. That's a lot of
Yeah,
people. What are some of the struggles that you face in those long middle years from a discipleship perspective, you know?
well, one of them is let's look at prayer. But not just prayer, relationally, because John of the Cross. John of the Cross says the parallel between your prayer life and your relational life, they're always perfectly parallel.
Interesting.
So one of them is when you're doing a long haul, it's not going to be exciting a lot of the time.
Prayer
There's
is
going to
not.
be, or even like in a marriage or with kids, there's going to be
Yes.
some long. Daniel Berrigan used to say, never travel with anyone who expects you to be exciting all the time. He said, on a long trip, there's going to be some boring stretches, And so whether it's in your family life, your marriage, your job, there's going to be some times where you, John of the Cross says one of the biggest issues in sustaining a prayer life is at a certain point there's just going to be a lot of boredom. There's going to be a lot of flatness, where you're not going to sustain yourself through, fervor and I'm
Yeah.
excited and
Working
so
up
on.
a second
Yeah.
honeymoon over and over again.
And a quote I often give there, which comes from Bonhoeffer, I very much like this quote when he was a Lutheran priest. And when he married couples, he'd always say this. He said, today you're very much in love. And you think that your love will sustain your marriage, but it can't. But your marriage can sustain your love.
Yes.
See,
Your covenant, your commitment.
yeah, the same with your commitment to God, your commitment to prayer. That can sustain
Yes.
your prayer life and your fervor and your goodwill.
And your formation. I mean,
Yeah.
Tim Keller has this beautiful insight about how it's the constraints of commitment, and he's thinking primarily here of marriage, parenting, career, ministry, that constraint, that sense of almost feels like a straitjacket at time, is actually what, if you let it do its work in you, sets your heart free
Yeah.
to become a person that's free
Yeah.
and is at peace and is open and joyful over many years of
Yeah.
fidelity to your call.
And see, inside of That's where I think people need a lot of spiritual help and understanding. In terms of, for instance, the talk you gave today on dark night of the soul. A lot of people don't know that. And see, so I love that expression you used to whoever it was that he went to see the guy and said, "What's wrong with me?" And he said,
Oh,
"God is,"
yeah. Yes, that was a young priest who went to, Thomas Kelly.
yeah. He said,
"What's wrong with me? I
he
don't
said,
feel
"Well,
God's
God is wrong
presence."
with you."
God is wrong with
See,
you.
because we're going to feel there's something wrong with us. Like I should be fervent, I should
Yes.
be really excited, and so on and prayer. And no, a lot of times it's, and that's, as you know, contemplative prayer. Then in the deep tradition, a lot of times it's just being there.
Yes.
It's not even lectio divino or things where you think like you just need to be there.
Yeah.
Uh,
And this isn't apathy. When you talk about boredom or flatness, it's not apathy. It's not a dull heart.
no, and
There's
it's not
actually a
and
sweetness that comes
yeah,
from
and
it. There's
it's
a
not like you're going through the motions.
Yeah. What
You,
did St. John call it? Just silent love.
yeah, but I have an analogy for that. See, John of the Cross says during those years, he said, and the deeper you go and the longer you go, he said, and I love this expression at one point. He says, the more the deep things begin to happen under the surface.
Hmm.
Now, what does he mean by that? So this is my favorite analogy. My students are already sick of this. God, he's not going to use this again. But it just says that imagine your mother is in a senior's home, assisted living, and you're the dutiful son, and you live 5 miles away. So every night after work, for an hour, you go and you spend an hour with your mother, help her settle down, so on. Um, so in the course of the year, how many times you can think you have an interesting, exciting conversation with your mother? Once or twice. The other times you're talking about the weather, the local sports team, what's happening in politics, and so on. Now, contrast that. You do that year in, year out. Your sister is conveniently living in Alaska, okay? She comes home once a year for a week, and her and her mother, they're hugging each other, and they're crying, and they're having a deep conversation. You want to kill them both. No. See, what she has, is that deeper than what you have? No,
No.
that's novice.
Yeah.
That's the first initiatory fervor.
Hmm.
Let your sister stay there for a while.
Yeah.
See, and when your mom dies, you're going to be closer to her than anybody else in the whole world.
Wow.
Not because you had a whole long time. You were there.
Yeah.
You were there.
Present, faithful.
And interesting, even if you fall asleep. Now, there's an interesting thing. Therese of Lisieux, the French mystic, somebody asked her once, is it wrong to fall asleep when you pray? And she said, not at all. Said a little child is equally pleasing to her parents awake or asleep, maybe more asleep.
That's
So
true.
imagine you're visiting your mother, she's having
Yes.
a little dinner, you're done a work day, and all of a sudden you doze off for 10 minutes in chair. She's good with that.
Yeah. She's just
You're
happy you're
tired.
there.
So John de Costa mystics say, go to prayer. If you fall asleep, it's even better. You're there. You're
Mm.
there. You know, See, earlier on in the spiritual life, it's very important that, the fervor happens.
Yes.
That the deep. But at a certain point, you just need to be there.
It seems like, my reading of St. John is that, the reason that God allows such feelings of his
Cuckoo.
presence and such, I think you'd call it spiritual pleasure,
Cuckoo.
in the early years of discipleship is because God is weaning us off of our love for the world, the flesh, and the devil. So
yeah.
he's causing us to fall in love with himself rather than the world.
Yeah.
It's just like, but we're still a drug addict. We've just moved from the drugs of the world, the flesh, the devil, to the drug of Jesus, But the problem with that is you're still run by the pleasure principle. We think we love God. We actually love the feelings we get from God, the emotional high we get from God, the honeymoon we get from God. Similar dynamic to dynamic marriage. Your stuff on marriage is brilliant about how we don't actually fall in love with a person. We fall in love with the archetype, a Jungian archetype of the feminine or the masculine and half the Godhead. And then we get married, and then we realize after a while, wait, this isn't half the Godhead.
This is a
This
person.
isn't femininity. This is Sarah, or this is
Yeah,
Bob,
yeah.
and they snore, and
Yeah,
they have a, zit on their nose or whatever. That's a real human, beautiful being.
Yeah.
And the universal becomes particular. And so in that same way, God has to wean us off the pleasure principle in order to actually mature us to a place where we can become people of love, people of agape,
Yeah.
So that's some of what's happening, right, in this
Yeah.
transition from stage 1 to stage 2.
Another thing that's a big piece of that, and you'll know that, and that is busyness.
Yes.
Flat out busyness. Like a lot of times during,
Yeah,
especially
speak to
during
me about that. I honestly
the
just
early generative years, it's busy. It's busy. You know, you're raising kids, you're doing this and so on. And I always say, busyness starts as a virtue and it ends as a vice.
mm,
Tell you what I mean by that.
yes,
It starts, you're doing this because it has to be done. You're trying to pay a mortgage, you're trying to run a job, you're trying to minister to these people, and you're doing all this stuff, and you're actually really dedicated and
yeah,
so on. And you don't have time to do interior work. You don't have time to have a long conversation with your wife. You're home, you're tired, and so on. And for a while, you're doing it because it's virtue. But after all, it's also a great escape. After all, you
yes.
realize, I don't have to deal with.
I don't
I
have to
don't,
do the inner
anymore.
work. I don't have to go
I'm too
there.
busy. I'm too busy. I'm too
Yes, I have
busy.
a great excuse.
But basically, that happens. It happens to me, even as a helper, as a minister. You get so involved in ministry that and so busy that after a while, you don't have to do inner work.
Yeah.
You know, um,
Busyness becomes your cultural narcotic.
yeah,
Becomes how you cope
it's the
with
drug.
pain
Yeah,
and what carries you over it
and then the longer you
until it
avoid
doesn't.
doing the inner work, the more you want to avoid it. You
Mm,
know,
oh,
uh,
interesting.
but
Why
see,
is that?
well, because it's like analogy. Say, suppose you have a fallout with somebody. If you apologize the next day, it's a little easier. If you wait for 3 years, it builds up.
Yes,
See,
harder
the
and
longer
harder
you
and
wait for
harder.
something, the more it builds up. So the longer you say that you put off, your wife says, we need to talk.
Mm,
It's best to do it then. If you put it off for weeks and months, it becomes this elephant in the room,
yep.
See, and the last thing that we struggle with is kind of taking life for granted and not having proper gratitude. Like
Mm. It's back to the we think we're immortal, you know?
well, or even this, like, I always tell people, you know what? When you're doing what you're doing, you're young, your family, and so on. Some people say it's quite a grind. You
Mm-hmm.
talk the rat race and so on.
Ugh, I
You
feel
know,
that right now. It's just
but now I want to give you some
tiring.
advice. Someday you're going to be in a senior's home, an assisted living, and you're going to look back and say, "Those were the best years of my life."
Wow.
See, when we're in them, oftentimes we can't appreciate
Yeah,
it.
right now I'm just thinking, how many more years until my
Yeah,
kids go away to college and I
yeah.
can have quiet mornings uninterrupted?
But
And you're
so
saying
many
once they go
people,
away, I'm going to be pining away,
yeah,
missing them.
and even worse, once because you'll still be busy, but once we're in the seniors' home,
Mm.
and they're serving you Jello at 4:30 in the afternoon, and you're gonna be saying, "Those were the best years of my life."
Wow.
And a lot of times, I wasn't there. I wasn't there
Yeah.
during these best years.
Just always on to the next
I
thing,
got
always
that
living in the
once,
future of the
ironically, where
past.
you don't get spiritual wisdom from a baseball player. And Toronto had a pitcher called David Steeb, and he was almost Hall of Fame. He won 20 games and won some. And years later, somebody asked him, said, "If you had your career do over again, you do it." He said, very different. The next time I'd enjoy it. He said, "You know
Wow.
something?" He said, "I had this incredible, privileged life. Playing a kids game and getting $6 million a year." And he said, "But I was always angry and I wasn't doing well enough." He said, "I never enjoyed it." He said, "No, I would enjoy it."
Mhm.
But it's the same thing being a parent,
Yes.
being a minister, and so on. Um, Cancer taught me that, you know,
Yes.
that I was gifted with cancer, which so that now I can say, this is good. This is the
Mm,
best day of my life,
this is
you know,
good.
because you get a sense of it. But otherwise, see the grind can make it seem I want to get this over with, you know, checking off the season of my life. I want to get out of here so I can get a rest
Yes.
sometime, Then
We're
we're
not
not
in it.
inside of our days. And
I,
that's particularly in early generativity when the kids are young,
yes.
the mortgage needs to be paid for, you're founding a church, you're setting up something, it's really busy, you're tired all the time. Um, you can forget that this is the best season of your
Of your
life.
life. Yeah, I need to hear that. I am so, Father Rolheiser, the way I'm wired, I am so on to the next thing. I mean,
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
it is laughable. If people could see inside my
yeah, yeah,
mind. It's just great. Cross that line. What's the next one? What's the
yeah,
next one?
yeah.
What's the next one? And it is such a
And even
toxic.
a simple thing is eating, where we eat
Yeah.
to fuel up. You take your car to the gas station and say, "Got half an hour for dinner, going to fuel up and on to the
Fuel
next."
up. Yeah, even calling it that.
Yeah,
My wife almost died a few years ago. She was dealt with a chronic illness for 15 years. Last 5 years were very serious. She was gearing up to die in her 30s at the time. And it's a very long story. She was healed, and in a very miraculous way. It's a whole other story. But just watching her transformation, she's not that old, but she just has this acute awareness, way more than I have, that life is a gift.
Yeah.
And because she had to stare down death at a young age, and because she was so unwell for multiple years leading up to it. And so if you were to ask her, she just says her life motto is thank you. That's her whole
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
motto. Thank you. And I just want to be present to the goodness of now. And she is the least complaining, most joyful
Yeah.
person I've
Yeah.
ever been close to.
Yeah.
Nobody has ever said that about me, ever.
Okay.
But man, there's something there, isn't there? Of just
Yeah.
learning to
And
embrace the
ironically,
goodness of
sometimes
now.
the more highly successful, and in the best sense you are, the more driven we become.
Exactly.
Because see now,
Well, the world rewards us for that
yeah.
hurry and frenetic busyness and drivenness and discontentment.
But
we get
also not
rewarded
just
for
the
that.
world, but and it's not even a bad thing. You yourself have internal standards now that you have to measure up to.
Yes.
You know, mediocrity won't serve you anymore.
Yeah.
And so we're driven from the
Yes.
inside. You know.
Mm-hmm. So take us into stage 3. So stage 1, struggle to get your life together. Stage 2, the struggle to give your life away. Love that paradigm. Stage 3, again, much less, very few people in the population dispersion, less people listening. But tell us stage 3, the struggle to give your death away.
Again, that's new in spirituality. It's not new in scripture.
Mm-hmm.
It's not new with the mystics, but it hasn't been a developed part of popular spirituality.
Is that in part because 100 years ago,
Yeah.
49
Yeah.
was the average life
If
expectancy? You didn't get that
yeah,
old?
yeah. And even when I was a kid, a lot of men and women died in their 60s.
Yeah.
You know, now they're dying in their 80s and 90s.
Yes.
You know, so today a lot of people are going to be pretty healthy at age 60, 65, going to retire. They're going to live for another 25 years healthily. What are those years for?
Yeah.
See, so partly it's not just preparing for death, but what's the new generativity you need during those years?
Mm-hmm.
You
What do you
know?
give your life to? What
Yeah.
does love look like?
Yeah. And I love using this analogy from scripture of Sarah and Abraham, that when she was 70, he was 80, God said, set out to a new country. When you get there, you're going to get pregnant and have your real child. And it took 20 years. So now when she's 90, he's 100. They give birth to Isaac. So I would say who's going to be the Isaac? What are you going to give birth to postmenopausal in your retirement years?
Yes.
Which might be the most important child you're ever going to give birth to, you know?
Interesting.
See, and that's the part about aging, but the part about dying, giving your death away is this. In John's gospel, the Last Supper scene is half his gospel, where Jesus is giving this long
Yep.
farewell discourse, but he keeps saying over and over again, my final gift to you. I'm going away. I'm going to leave you peace.
Yeah.
Peace is my gift to you.
It's better that I go away.
And see, so that, like right now, okay, you're in even your early generative years, you're raising kids and so on. See, right now, you're trying to give your life to your kids, and you are, okay. Someday, and hopefully, they're going to be around longer than you, because nobody wants to bury their own kids and so on. That when you go away, your final gift to them must be peace. That when you die, they just have a sense of it's complete, like Jesus, it's finished.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a despairing thing. Like, there's nothing else I have to give. It's all done, and that when your kids think of you and your grandkids, they'll only have peaceful and good and warm thoughts. The spirit you leave behind, because not only Jesus left the spirit behind, the Holy Spirit, we leave a spirit behind. Not the Holy Spirit, but our own spirit.
Right. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
And like, for instance, are your parents still alive?
They are.
See, mine are dead, but they've been dead a lot of years. But I have a sense of them, and they left me a spirit of peace.
Yes.
I have only good thoughts. I'm only nurtured by their memories and so on, and by their presence inside,
It's
the
interesting.
mystical body of
I've
Christ.
watched my dad in particular has lost both his parents. The way he talks about them, it's very similar to that.
Yeah.
Very similar to that.
I was 21. My mom and dad died. And they died 3 months apart. They were both
No,
young.
and you were 21 years
Yeah,
old,
dad was
and you're the
62.
youngest of 12 children, right?
No, more than 12. I'm not giving it a number. Okay, it's a discrete
You d
number.
I just asked where you
Okay,
were in the birth order, and you said 12. I just assumed you were
no, there was
less.
some
You're
more. Okay,
not. Wow.
okay, this was Catholic. Okay,
Yes.
and and then my mom died 3 months later. My mom was 58. My dad was 62, and at the time, this was just we really struggled to
Yes.
absorb that hit.
Yes.
Um,
Heartbreaking.
you know,
I'm so
well,
sorry.
in a year or two later, it's all turned warm,
Mhm.
and it's like a nurturing memory.
Mhm.
And in fact, that you'll have that experience. When people who die, whom you're close to, if they're good people, there's the initial sadness, but then it all turns warm, and
Yeah.
um, it's a nurturing memory and so on. See, but see, that's the last part of your life. Anyways, life is how do you die so that when you die, um, you can see like Jesus on your deathbed. It's finished. It's
Yeah.
finished. I've given
Even
everything.
your death is a blessing
Yeah,
to
you know.
others, 'cause that's not inevitable. You're not saying that's an inevitable. Lots of people do not leave a spirit
Well,
of
yeah,
peace
yeah, yeah.
behind, right? It's
Some people can
regret and
leave behind a
hurt
spirit
and
of, you
shame.
know, family tears apart and all kinds of things and so
Mhm.
on. Um,
Generational
yeah,
cycles of sin or addiction or
yeah.
abuse.
You know what
Mhm.
psychologists say that? They say that death washes clean for good and for bad.
Mm.
When see when a good person dies, that person, he or she had foibles and so on. Very soon it's washed away. You only remember the great things. But vice versa. When a bad person dies, they may
Mm.
have had some with after a while it washes clean the other way. You
Yes.
know, I've heard some people talk about their prison. My dad was awful. It's just this awful man, and so on.
Mm.
Well, notice that's not exactly a nurturing spirit he left behind.
Yes.
You know, um, and I need therapy. I need to join men's groups. I somehow have to be healed from my own father.
Mm.
You know, in fact,
That is a great tragedy.
Daniel Berrigan, the great
Mhm.
Jesuit, he said. My father could never bless me. He just couldn't bless me. And that was a bad man. He said, but just said that's the deepest one of my life. He said, my
Mm.
dad could not bless me. He said, my mother could.
Yeah.
He said, my bad dad couldn't. And then he also said, is it any marvel that every policeman and every president and stuff were an irritant to me? Like every
Mm.
authority figure in my life, I was in their face. You
Mm.
know, he said,
He was an anti-war activist,
yeah,
right? So
but he was
very kind of
anti-president, yeah,
hardcore,
yeah.
yeah,
But he
activist kind
so
of.
in some sense, it made him prophetic, but
Mhm.
later on in life, he admitted, he said, like, a lot of anger
Yeah, there's
never
a
worked out,
anger and hostility
you know,
beneath the good work. Yeah.
yeah, his dad, you know.
Mm.
Uh, but sometimes your father, they have to die before you really get them, who they are,
Mm.
you know. I loved my parents when they were alive, but a couple of years after they died, I thought, I drew a long straw. This was good, you
Mm.
know.
So getting your life together, giving your life away, giving your death away. What a concept. Why is this frame? And again, this is not chapter and verse. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
empirical science. There's no one size fits all. Life is not that linear, et cetera, et cetera. But why is this basic paradigm of three stages? Why is that? How is that helpful to, let's say somebody's listening, they're 26 years old, or they're 34 years old, or they're single, or they have a young baby. Like, how 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 does this inform how you navigate today?
Well, what we did tonight, we just laid out the stages, okay? But see, then the second step is, for instance, in your ministry and stuff, um, we have to tailor teaching and programs and stuff for those stages, you
Mm,
know, so that, so I'll give you a perfect example. Up until recently, we had no teaching, we had no programs for people in that third stage.
yes.
And so what
You had
happened?
very few people in that third
No,
stage.
but I mean, even when we did, then they stayed in. They just tried. I'm going to just be generative as long as I can, you
Yes.
know. Um, and they never became holy old fools or holy old beggars. We
Hmm.
hang on,
Yes, I've seen people, really good people, who lived incredible lives who
you
just
know,
can't seem to die with
and
grace.
let it go
They
and
can't
let
let
it
it go.
go.
They're just still trying to keep it
See,
up and to the
because
right.
we haven't helped them, you
Yeah.
know. Um, And see, and for instance, in the second stage, okay, in ministry, it's important how we minister to young couples and so on, how
Mm.
we understand their issues and so on. Um, so that, see, so, and it's important what kind of books they read. So you were telling me today, you said like, um, if you have somebody at 20 years old or something, said, don't read Sacred Fire,
Yes.
read
Don't
Holy
read. No,
Long.
no, you need to
Yeah,
wait till you're ready
yeah,
for it.
yeah, because see, so see, we can, it's a horrible verb. We can tailor certain kinds of spirituality
Mm-hmm.
to their life cycle,
Yes.
The same as we know that already with little kids,
Yes.
Sunday school, you
Yes.
teach
But
little
the
kids to,
saying,
yeah,
when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? There's
yeah,
just there's certain things we're just not ready to receive
yeah,
until we're ready.
yeah.
You know, there are many books, there are many ideas that I think I came across in my early 20s, and I could not metabolize it at that point.
Yeah.
I had to wait on another decade or two
And
before I
and
was
then
ready.
to avoid mistakes. And I gave an example of my what mistake I made. So I'm using the Mary Martha thing to talk about how we should all be Mother Teresa and Henry Nouwen and so on. And and so this person says, yeah, well, if I'm stepping off the plane and
Meaning you're
stuff.
talking about how life is more about who you are than what
Yeah,
you
yeah,
do. It's
yeah.
about being
And
more than
do
doing.
and what you do is not important at
Yes,
all,
your
and so on.
identity doesn't come from
Just
success
feel
or
good about yourself. And the guy says,
yes,
how do you do that if you're a big fat nobody? It's
yes.
one thing if you just won the Nobel Prize, And he's right. I realized that was a bit of a slap in the face, saying, whoa, whoa. If I'm preaching to 70-year-olds, that makes some sense.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm preaching to 27-year-olds,
Doesn't make sense in
it's
the
the wrong
same
sermon.
way.
You
Yep.
know,
So your book trilogy, two of the three are out. Holy Longing for stage one, great read for people early on in discipleship or early on in life. Sacred Fire, which is in mine. We have a family canon, kind of a
yeah,
silly idea, but we have these 30 books that have
yeah,
shaped the
yeah.
life of our family's legacy. And it is for sure there in my top 10. I read it every single summer. You would laugh if you saw my copy. It has just been highlighted so much. I don't think there's anything left to highlight. I need to start over. And then book three should be out, God willing, in a year or two. Title is
Insane for the light.
Insane for the Light, which is the whole book on giving your death away.
Yeah. And that's also stolen from the same poem, The Holy Longing.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Yes.
See, so Goethe, who wrote this poem, he says, like earlier on, we have this holy longing. Said, but you can reach a stage in your life, he says, where he says, a desire for higher lovemaking takes you over. He said, and then he said, you become insane for the light. And
Hmm.
eventually, like a butterfly, you just fly away.
Wow.
The publisher always said, make a great name for a rock album. Wouldn't it? Insane for the light.
It does. Or a beautiful book from
Yeah,
Father
yeah,
Ronald Rolheiser.
yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your life, your wisdom, your humility. Thank you for the written word. I'm a lover of books. They've just, prior to moments like this one, books have given me access to the mind and heart and life of somebody like you. And this is such a gift. I'm praying this recording will do the same for others. But thank you, bless you, we honor you, and may God extend your life for many, many years.
Well, I want to thank you too. First of all, I wanna thank you for for taking my writing stuff into this constituency. You
Yes.
know, um, um, I'm really touched that my writings are reaching ecumenically to
Mm-hmm.
all the different churches and
Yes.
so on. I've always tried to write more as a Christian,
Yes.
primarily and a Roman Catholic, secondarily.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I got that from Nouwen in terms
Yes.
of like, um, see, Nouwen was unapologetically a Roman Catholic priest, and so am I. But that I'm not writing, I'm writing for everybody, you
Yes.
know. And so I want to thank you for taking there, but also I want to thank you for your ministry. You know,
It's very kind.
it's just so needed, and you are reaching into another generation, and I'm glad you're taking my writings into that generation.
Yes.
Um, I'll give you an example. Like in this room, we do continuing education every year, and we put through between 2,000 and 3,000 people every year. But the average age is probably 50 to 60. What we're doing here, we're doing some wonderful work at the school. We're not reaching the Gen Z, and we're not
Yes.
reaching millennials very much at
But
all.
there's a timelessness to it. I mean, literally
Yeah,
walking over here, I ran in outside. We're on grounds for your Oblate school. a 20-something brilliant young man who's discovered Nowen and has been, I've been feeding him Nowen books or whatever. And he said, ask Father Rolheiser, do you think that Nowen could be like the patron saint for Gen Z because of Nowen's deep, awareness of his pain, his struggles with mental illness, his sexuality, the way that he was honest about his pain, his proximity to God, his honesty about his experience of God. And I just think, these books they hold up.
Yeah.
And your books are waiting. Your books about I mean, if anybody who's not read The Shattered Lantern, which is your book about prayer in a secular age, or read Reaching Out or The Way of the Heart by now. And I mean, these books stand the test of time. The soul, yes, the world has changed and we live in it, all the things, but it's the same human soul. And I think the ability that you and Nowen and a few other, just a few others have to name that life of interiority with Jesus is such a gift to so many of us. So here's my closing question. What are one or two or three deep passions of yours that you don't see being picked up by millennials and Gen Z and the next generations? You feel like maybe from your vantage point are kind of dying out. Is there anything that you could articulate that you would say to my generation and below, don't lose this. This is a baton I'm handing you. Don't drop it. Like, carry this torch with you.
Well, one of them is, before I was 30 years old, I wrote a book called The Restless Heart, which is the book of my youth. It's basically, but it's all the Augustinian thing about we're born or restless,
Yes.
our hearts shall rest until they rest in you. See, for a millennial or a Gen Z, I'd say, read that book. Read
Mm,
that book. Um, the other thing is not so much a passion to get them, but a passion to somehow get them to understand and value community.
mm,
Um, See that they're growing up in a world of high,
yes.
what I call pathological individuality,
Mm,
and where community is, you buy in when it's convenient, when
yeah.
you
It's
don't.
consumeristic.
Um,
Yeah.
you don't, you hedge your commitments,
Yes. Oh,
temporary but
yes.
never permanent, and so on. Um, and just to somehow find something that can give them some kind of buffer against the culture,
Mm.
you
Something
know,
to stand between you
or
and
gives you
the corrosive nature of culture at large.
you know, like prayer does it,
Mm-hmm.
work with the poor. I know what some churches are doing with some success. I've seen it helped a couple of my nieces and so on, where they would take them on these, you know, take them down and build houses in a poor part of Peru for half a year or something where,
Yeah. Or gap
yeah,
year.
yeah,
Yes.
and get them out of the culture,
Mm-hmm.
so that they just have another perspective on the world,
Mm-hmm.
because our culture is so powerful. It's so
Yes.
narcotic.
Mm-hmm.
And but the last thing about it's interesting you should ask is got this: could Henry Nouwen be patron saint of Gen Z? I'm on the Henry Nouwen board, where
Hmm.
we know we're committed to keeping it. And right now we are trying to find ways to reach into that generation.
Hmm.
You know, um, we realize that Henry is still very popular with the boomers, pretty less so with the millennials, and probably not very much known with the
Hmm.
Gen Z.
No,
No,
I
okay,
do think there
okay,
is such a need and such a beauty. And so thank you again.
okay.
We
Thanks.
honor you.
And thanks for coming on our campus.
Yes, honor to be here. Very
Okay.
grateful. Bless you.